Hi, today in my kitchen I'm going to make roast squash quinoa patties or burgers, whatever you want to call them. We're going to use squash. I'm using butternut squash. You can use any winter type squash that you have available, and I'm also going to use quinoa flakes and some herbs. So the first thing I'm going to do is roast my squash ahead of time. I don't need a whole lot of squash. I'm going to use about 300 grams of squash in this recipe, but what I'm going to do, since I've got the oven on, I'm actually going to roast more squash, and then I'm also going to make a squash soup as well, a roast squash soup. If you want the soup, just go check out the link or in the description for that, and I'll post the roast squash soup recipe that I'm making today. It's delicious and highly recommended. But anyway, today we're making roast squash quinoa burgers. So the easiest way to roast your squash is get a sharp heavy knife, be really careful with your fingers, slice it right through the middle, scoop out the seeds. The easiest way to do it, if you're feeling lazy, is just keep it like that and put it in your tray. So that is going to take longer to cook. You might just want to chop it down a little bit smaller. I'm just going to put it in quarters. So I'm just going to pop that in the oven and let it cook. It'll probably take about 45 minutes until I can pierce it with a fork and it's nice and soft and mashable. So I've got my squash. I want about 300 grams of that, so I'm just going to weigh that. I'm going to just scoop the main part of the squash away from the skin. I'm not going to use the skin in this recipe today. So this is nice and mashable. And also when you roast your squash, it deepens the flavour. It brings out the natural sweetness, which is amazing. Doesn't matter if you get a little bit more, by the way. 300 grams is probably about half a medium-sized butternut squash. You've got to remember that when you roast your squash, it's going to reduce down in size. So 300 grams in uncooked squash is not the same. And then I'm going to mash the squash just with a fork. You see how soft that squash is? Now this is going to act as a binder as well. So what else have we got in these roast squash patties? I've got quinoa flakes. I've also got 100 grams of pumpkin seed. I ground the pumpkin seeds roughly. It doesn't matter if there's a few little bits of rustic chunks in there. I ground them down in a NutriBullet, which just takes a few seconds really. And then I got a nice handful of parsley from my backyard, and then I chopped that into tiny pieces. I also thought it might be nice to put a little bit of rosemary in. If you've got rosemary, just put a tiny little bit in. And then I finely chopped 2 medium-sized cloves of garlic. I'm going to put a twist of black pepper in, a teaspoon of sea salt. So you're going to mix that in. It might take a couple of minutes to do this until everything is evenly combined. You don't want any dry bits of quinoa. So that's the sort of consistency that we're looking for. You just want to grab nice little bits like that in your hands and then shape them into patty shapes. It's going to be moist. They're going to stick together incredibly well. Look at that. So you just make little patties about 1 centimetre deep. You can do smaller ones, you can do mini bite-sized ones as well. It's completely up to you. They look absolutely gorgeous and pretty. Look how well together that mixture sticks. There we go. So if you do them about that size, you're going to get about 8 patties. You can keep them in the fridge for a few days. You can even freeze them, but I would separate them with parchment paper or baking paper just so that they don't stick together. I'm gonna grill some of these now. You can also put them in the air fryer, you can put them in the oven, or you can put them on a barbecue. They work really nicely always. I'm gonna grill them. They're probably gonna take about 7.5 minutes on each side. Perfect, absolutely perfect. See how well they hold together? They're crispy on the outside, and because they've got so much moisture from the roast squash on the inside, they're going to be absolutely delectable. I'm actually going to have a little taste now. So these would serve really nicely with salad, like a raw slaw. I'll leave some suggestions in that blurby bit underneath the video. Also hummus. If you dip them in some hummus or some tahini sauce, or homemade ketchup or shop bought ketchup. They'd go really nicely with salad, a sauce and potato wedgies or quinoa or rice. You know what? And my favourite thing to do with them is let them cool down, put them in a lunchbox and take them with me as hiking food. So thank you so much for your time and tuning in. I really appreciate you being here. If you like it, please leave a comment or give it a thumbs up. It helps me gauge what you're interested in so that I can share more. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.